The autumn wind swept through the narrow streets of Manhattan's financial district, carrying with it the scent of roasted chestnuts from a nearby vendor and the promise of an early winter. Fallen leaves, painted in shades of amber and crimson, danced along the sidewalks as the city transitioned from the chaos of rush hour to the sophisticated rhythm of evening dining. Lena Harper stood before the full-length mirror in the staff room of Luminosa, adjusting her black vest for what felt like the 100th time. The elegant Italian restaurant where she worked demanded perfection from its servers: crisp white shirts, perfectly knotted ties, and shoes polished to a mirror shine. She tucked a stray strand of her dark brown hair behind her ear, making sure every pin was secure in her neat bun. "You look fine, Lena. Stop fussing," came a voice from behind her. She turned to see Marcus, one of the senior waiters, leaning against the doorframe with an amused smile. At 45, he'd been working at Luminosa since it opened 12 years ago, and had taken Lena under his wing when she'd started 2 years prior. I know, Lena replied, smoothing down her vest one final time. "It's just, Mr. Caruso is always so particular about Friday nights." "Mr. Caruso is particular about every night," Marcus chuckled, walking over to check his own appearance in the mirror. "But Friday nights bring in the high rollers, and you know how he gets about maintaining our reputation." Lena nodded, taking a deep breath. At 26, she'd learned to navigate the demanding environment of upscale dining, though it never quite felt natural to her. She'd grown up in a small town in Pennsylvania, where her parents had run a modest diner, the kind of place where everyone knew your name and the coffee was always fresh. This world of crystal chandeliers, prix-fixe menus with unpronounceable French names, and clientele who spent more on a single bottle of wine than she made in a week still felt foreign. But she needed this job. More than that, she needed the tips that came with it. "How's Emma doing?" Marcus asked, his voice softening as he mentioned Lena's younger sister. Lena's expression brightened despite the worry that always lingered in her eyes when she thought about her 19-year-old sister. "She's good. Started her new physical therapy routine this week. The doctors are optimistic about her progress." "That's wonderful news," Marcus said genuinely. He knew the weight Lena carried, had known since the night she'd broken down in the walk-in freezer during her first month, overwhelmed by the medical bills that seemed to multiply faster than she could pay them. "Yeah," Lena agreed, though her smile was tinged with exhaustion. "It's expensive, though. I picked up an extra shift on Sunday and I'm covering for Rachel on Wednesday." Marcus frowned. "Lena, you're already working 6 days a week. You need to rest sometimes." "I'll rest when Emma's better," she replied, her tone gentle but firm. It was an argument they'd had before and one she always won through sheer determination. Before Marcus could respond, the sharp voice of Mr. Caruso echoed through the hallway. "Staff meeting in 2 minutes. Let's go, people." The staff room quickly filled with servers, busboys, and bartenders, all gathering for the pre-service briefing that Mr. Caruso insisted upon every evening. Giuseppe Caruso was a man in his late 50s, with silver hair slicked back and a personality that swung between charming host and exacting perfectionist, depending on the circumstance. "All right, listen up," Mr. Caruso began, clapping his hands together. "We have a full house tonight. All tables are reserved and we have several VIP guests. I need everyone at their absolute best. Antonio," he turned to the head chef who stood nearby, "how's the kitchen looking?" "Perfect, as always," Antonio replied with characteristic Italian confidence. "Good. Now section assignments." Mr. Caruso consulted his tablet. "Lena, you'll be taking tables 12 through 16 tonight. That includes the corner booth." Lena felt a small flutter of nerves. The corner booth was the most secluded table in the restaurant, positioned in an alcove with a view of the entire dining room. It was typically reserved for guests who valued privacy, celebrities, business executives conducting sensitive meetings, or, as Marcus had once joked, people planning either marriages or affairs. "The corner booth has been reserved by a Mr. Romano," Mr. Caruso continued. "Party of 4, 8 o'clock reservation. He's a new client but came highly recommended by one of our regulars. Make sure he receives impeccable service." "Of course, Mr. Caruso," Lena replied professionally. "Excellent. Everyone know their stations? Good. We open doors in 15 minutes. Take your positions." The staff dispersed, moving through the restaurant like a well-choreographed ballet. Lena made her way to her section, checking each table setting with meticulous care. Water glasses positioned exactly 2 inches from the knife, napkins folded in the signature Luminosa style, a standing fan that resembled a peacock's tail, candles lit and burning evenly. The restaurant itself was a masterpiece of old-world elegance, Dark mahogany panels lined the walls, interspersed with paintings of the Italian countryside, rolling hills of Tuscany, the canals of Venice, the dramatic coastline of Amalfi. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm golden glow throughout the space, their light reflecting off the pristine white tablecloths and polished silverware. In one corner, a pianist sat at a gleaming black grand piano, running through scales as he prepared for the evening's performance. Through the large windows at the front of the restaurant, Lena could see the city settling into night. Office workers hurried past, eager to begin their weekends. A couple paused outside, studying the menu posted by the door before deciding it was beyond their budget and moving on. Yellow cabs wove through traffic, their horns creating the constant urban symphony that Lena had grown accustomed to. 5 minutes, called out David, the maitre d', checking his watch. Lena positioned herself near her section, mentally reviewing the evening's specials. The butternut squash ravioli with sage brown butter, the pan-seared branzino with roasted fennel, the osso buco that Antonio swore was the best he'd ever created. She'd learned early on that knowing the menu inside and out wasn't just helpful, it was essential. Guests at Luminosa expected their servers to be knowledgeable, almost like culinary advisors. The front doors opened, and the evening began. The first hour passed in the typical flurry of activity. Lena greeted guests with her practiced smile, took orders with careful attention to detail, and navigated the kitchen's organized chaos with practiced ease. Her section filled quickly, a young couple celebrating an anniversary, a group of businesswomen enjoying a night out, an elderly man dining alone with a leather-bound book propped against the wine list. At 7:45, David approached her station. "Lena, your 8 o'clock is here early. I'm seating them now." She glanced toward the entrance and saw David leading a group of 4 men toward the corner booth. Even from across the restaurant, they commanded attention. 3 of them were large, broad-shouldered men who moved with the careful awareness of trained security personnel. Their suits were expensive, but couldn't quite hide the athletic builds beneath. But it was the 4th man who drew Lena's gaze. He was tall, perhaps 6'2", with dark hair touched with gray at the temples. His suit was impeccably tailored, the kind that whispered rather than shouted wealth. As he walked, there was a natural authority in his bearing, not the aggressive posturing of someone trying to prove their importance, but the quiet confidence of someone who'd never needed to. Vittorio Romano was 39 years old, though he carried himself with the gravitas of someone older. His face was handsome in a classical way, strong jaw, straight nose, eyes that were dark and assessing, but there were lines around those eyes, marks of stress and sleepless nights that no amount of money could erase. Lena took a steadying breath and approached the table as David finished seating the party. "Good evening, gentlemen," she said warmly. "Welcome to Luminosa. My name is Lena, and I'll be taking care of you this evening." 3 pairs of eyes barely acknowledged her, still scanning the restaurant with professional vigilance. But Vittorio's gaze met hers, and for a moment she felt oddly exposed, as if those dark eyes could see past her professional demeanor to the exhausted young woman beneath. "Good evening," Vittorio replied, his voice deep and measured, carrying just a trace of an accent, Italian but softened by years in America. "Thank you, Lena." The fact that he'd used her name, actually listened when she'd introduced herself, surprised her. In her experience, powerful men often looked through service workers as if they were invisible. "Can I start you off with something to drink?" she asked, falling back into the comfortable routine of her job. "We have an excellent wine selection, or perhaps some sparkling water." "Bring us a bottle of the Barolo," said one of the other men, his tone more command than request. But Vittorio raised a hand slightly, and the man immediately fell silent. "The lady asked me a question, Vincent. Let me answer." He turned back to Lena, and she caught the briefest hint of amusement in his eyes. "The Barolo sounds perfect. The 2015, if you have it." "We do," Lena confirmed. "Excellent choice. And would you like some sparkling water for the table as well?" "Please, San Pellegrino if you have it." "Of course, I'll bring those right out and give you a few minutes to look over the menu." As she walked toward the bar to place the wine order, Lena felt an odd prickle at the back of her neck, the sensation of being watched. She glanced back and found that Vittorio's attention had already returned to the menu, his expression thoughtful as he studied the offerings. Marcus caught her at the service station. "That's quite a table you've got there," he murmured, keeping his voice low. "What do you mean?" "The corner booth. I saw them come in. Those guys aren't just successful businessmen, Lena. Look at how they carry themselves, how they watch the room." Lena frowned. looking back at her table. Now that Marcus mentioned it, she could see what he meant. The three men surrounding Vittorio weren't relaxing into their evening. Their eyes constantly moved, cataloging exits, watching other diners, noting the staff's movements. Security? She guessed. Maybe. Or maybe something else. Marcus shrugged. Just be careful. Be professional. Don't ask questions. And definitely don't get involved in whatever business they're conducting. Marcus, I serve food and smile. That's literally my entire job description. I know. I'm probably being paranoid. But after 20 years in this industry, you develop an instinct for these things. The sommelier appeared with the bottle of Barolo, and Lena pushed Marcus's concerns to the back of her mind. She had a job to do, and whatever these men were or weren't was none of her business. When she returned to the table with the wine and water, the four men were engaged in quiet conversation that immediately ceased upon her arrival. Vittorio nodded his approval, and she went through the ritual of presenting the bottle, opening it, and pouring a small amount for him to taste. He swirled the wine in his glass, observing its color in the candlelight before taking a sip. Perfect, he said simply. Lena poured for the table, her movements practiced and elegant. Have you had a chance to look over the menu, or would you like a few more minutes? What do you recommend? Vittorio asked, and once again, she had the sense that he was genuinely interested in her opinion, not just making polite conversation. The osso buco is exceptional tonight, Lena replied. Our chef, Antonio, has been perfecting his grandmother's recipe for 30 years, and I think he finally got it exactly right. The meat falls off the bone, and the gremolata on top adds this perfect brightness. If you prefer seafood, the branzino is also beautiful, very light and delicate. You've tried both? One of the other men asked skeptically. The staff meal is one of the perks of working here, Lena replied with a slight smile. Antonio believes we should know what we're serving. Vittorio nodded appreciatively. I'll have the osso buco, and start us with the burrata and the carpaccio. The other men placed their orders, and Lena headed to the kitchen, inputting the order into the computer system. The restaurant had grown busier, the sound of conversation and clinking silverware filling the space. The pianist had begun his set, his fingers dancing across the keys in a rendition of Autumn Leaves that seemed perfectly suited to the evening. The next hour unfolded smoothly. Lena tended to all her tables, but she found herself particularly attentive to the corner booth. There was something about Vittorio Romano that intrigued her, though she couldn't quite articulate what it was. He was polite to her in a way that felt almost old-fashioned, standing slightly when she approached the table, saying, "Please," and "thank you," in a tone that suggested he actually meant it. The three men with him treated her with professional courtesy, but nothing more. They ate quickly, economically, their attention always divided between their meal and their surveillance of the restaurant. Vittorio, by contrast, seemed to savor his food, taking time with each bite, occasionally closing his eyes briefly as if to better appreciate the flavors. "How is everything?" Lena asked during one of her check-ins. "Excellent," Vittorio replied. "Your Antonio has indeed perfected his grandmother's recipe. Please give him my compliments." "I will. Can I get you anything else?" "Another bottle of the Barolo, I think, and Lena." He waited until she met his eyes. "Thank you for the recommendation. You have good taste." It was a simple compliment, but something about the way he said it made Lena feel oddly flustered. She smiled, nodded, and retreated to place the wine order, wondering why her heart was beating a little faster than usual. At 9:30, the restaurant was at its peak. Every table was full. The noise level had risen to a pleasant hum of overlapping conversations, and the kitchen was operating at maximum capacity. Lena was balancing 3 plates on her arms, delivering entrees to table 14, when she noticed a change in atmosphere at the corner booth. The 3 men with Vittorio had tensed, their relaxed postures suddenly alert. Their eyes were all fixed on something near the entrance. Lena glanced over and saw 3 new men entering the restaurant. They were being greeted by David, but something about them set off the same alarm bells that Marcus had tried to warn her about earlier. These men were younger, probably in their late 20s, wearing leather jackets that seemed out of place in Luminosa's elegant atmosphere. David looked uncomfortable, checking his reservation list with a confused expression. Lena delivered her plates, smiled at her guests, and made her way back toward her section. She was near the service station when she heard raised voices, not quite shouting, but aggressive enough to cut through the ambient noise of the restaurant. "I said we don't have a reservation under that name," David was saying, his professional composure starting to crack. "Perhaps you're thinking of a different restaurant. We're in the right place," one of the newcomers said. His eyes were scanning the dining room, searching. When his gaze landed on the corner booth, something flashed across his face. Recognition, and then something harder. Mr. Caruso had materialized beside David, his expression stern. "Gentlemen, if you don't have a reservation, I'm afraid we can't accommodate you this evening. We're completely booked." "That's fine," the man said, but he wasn't looking at Mr. Caruso. He was still staring at the corner booth where Vittorio had gone very still, his wine glass frozen halfway to his lips. Lena felt her stomach tighten with apprehension. Something was wrong. Very wrong. The three newcomers started walking into the restaurant, ignoring David's protests. The pianist, sensing the change in atmosphere, stumbled over a note and then stopped playing entirely. Conversations throughout the dining room began to falter as other diners noticed the disruption. At the corner booth, Vittorio's companions had risen to their feet, positioning themselves between their employer and the approaching men. The movement was subtle but unmistakable, protective, defensive. "Mr. Romano," one of the newcomers called out, his voice carrying across the now quiet restaurant. "We need to have a conversation." "Not here," Vittorio replied calmly, though Lena could see the tension in his jaw. "Not now. I think right here and right now is perfect. Mr. Caruso was frantically gesturing for someone to call the authorities, but everything seemed to be happening in slow motion. Lena stood frozen near her section, her mind racing. Other diners were beginning to realize something serious was happening. Chairs scraped as people started to stand. Conversations died completely, replaced by an ominous silence. The confrontation was unfolding near table 14, right in the center of Lena's section. The newcomers had stopped about 10 feet from the corner booth, blocked by Vittorio's companions. The tension was palpable, like a rubber band stretched to its breaking point. "You've got some nerve showing up at someone else's business," Vincent, the man who'd tried to order for Vittorio earlier, said. His hand had moved to his jacket, and Lena's heart nearly stopped when she realized what he might be reaching for. "Put your hand down, Vincent," Vittorio commanded, his voice sharp. "Not here. There are innocent people. Listen to your boss," one of the newcomers sneered. "Always so concerned about innocent people. That's always been your weakness, Romano." Lena didn't make a conscious decision about what happened next. Later, she wouldn't be able to explain what made her move, what instinct overrode her common sense and self-preservation. But in that moment, watching the situation spiral towards something terrible, she found herself stepping forward. She was carrying a tray, empty but solid metal. She'd picked it up from the service station without thinking, and now she moved toward the confrontation with no clear plan other than an overwhelming need to defuse the situation before someone got hurt. "Excuse me, gentlemen," she said, her voice remarkably steady despite the fear coursing through her. "I'm going to have to ask you to take this outside. You're disturbing our other guests." Every eye in the restaurant turned to her. The three newcomers looked at her with a mixture of surprise and contempt. Vittorio's companions seemed stunned, and Vittorio himself. His expression was unreadable, but his eyes held a warning. "Lady, you need to step back," one of the newcomers said. "This doesn't concern you." "Actually, it does," Lena replied, moving closer despite every instinct screaming at her to run. "This is my section. These are my guests, and you're creating a problem. So either take your business outside or I'm going to have to ask you to leave entirely." The absurdity of a waitress threatening these clearly dangerous men would have been comical under different circumstances, but there was something in Lena's voice, a firmness born of dealing with difficult customers, of standing up to bill collectors who called at all hours, of protecting her younger sister from anything and everything that threatened her. One of the newcomers laughed, a harsh sound. "You've got courage, I'll give you that, but this really isn't your fight." "She's right, though," Vittorio said, standing now. He moved around his companions, and Lena noticed he was deliberately positioning himself away from the other diners. "This isn't the place. You want to talk to me? Fine. But we do it outside, away from these people." For a moment, everything hung in balance. Then one of the newcomers made a movement. Fast, sudden. His hand went to his jacket and time seemed to fragment into horrible slow motion. Lena saw the motion, saw Vincent and the others react, saw the horror on nearby diners' faces as they realized what was happening, and without thinking, operating on pure instinct, she did something that made no logical sense whatsoever. She stepped between Vittorio and the danger, raising the metal tray like a shield, and shouted at the top of her lungs, "Stay behind me!" The next few seconds were chaos. There was a flash from across the room, not from the newcomers directly in front of them, but from someone else. A fourth person Lena hadn't even noticed near the entrance. Something hit her tray with a metallic clang that reverberated through her entire body. The force nearly knocked her backward, but strong hands caught her from behind. Vittorio, steadying her. Then suddenly the restaurant erupted into motion. People were screaming, diving under tables. The sound of breaking glass filled the air. More flashes came from near the entrance, but Vittorio's companions had formed a wall, returning defensive action that Lena's mind couldn't fully process. "Get down!" someone shouted. Vittorio pulled Lena behind the solid mahogany column that supported the corner booth, his body curving protectively over hers. She could feel his heart hammering against her back, could hear his harsh breathing in her ear. "What did you just do?" he said, his voice a mixture of disbelief and something that might have been anger. "What the hell did you just do?" Lena couldn't answer. She was shaking too hard, the adrenaline making her entire body tremble. In her hands, the metal tray had a distinct dent, not a through-and-through hole, but a clear impact point where something had struck it with tremendous force. The commotion lasted less than 30 seconds, though it felt like hours. By the time the immediate danger had passed, the newcomers had fled, and the restaurant was in complete disarray. Tables were overturned. Wine spilled across white tablecloths like blood. The beautiful chandelier swayed from where someone had grabbed it for balance. Diners huddled under tables or pressed against walls, some crying, others in shock. And in the corner, pressed against the mahogany column, Lena Harper stood with Vittorio Romano's arm still around her, both of them breathing hard, both trying to process what had just happened. Sirens wailed in the distance. Growing closer, Vittorio slowly released her, stepping back but keeping one hand on her shoulder as if to steady her, or perhaps to steady himself. When she turned to look at him, his face was pale beneath his olive complexion, his eyes wide with an emotion she couldn't quite identify. "You," he started, then stopped, seeming to struggle for words. "You stepped in front of me." I don't know why," Lena admitted, her voice shaking. I saw what was happening and I just moved." "Do you have any idea what could have happened? What almost did happen?" His hand tightened on her shoulder, and now she could identify the emotion in his eyes, fear, not for himself, but for her. "I'm okay," she said, though she wasn't entirely sure that was true. Her legs felt weak and the tray was still clutched in her white-knuckled grip. Vincent approached, his face grim. "Boss, we need to leave. Now. Before the authorities arrive and start asking questions we don't want to answer." Vittorio nodded but didn't immediately move. His eyes were still locked on Lena's face, searching for something. "Are you hurt? Did anything?" "I'm fine," she insisted, though her voice sounded distant to her own ears. "I'm fine. You should go. He's right." "Vittorio now," Vincent pressed. But Vittorio didn't move. Instead, he reached into his jacket, causing Lena to flinch involuntarily, and pulled out a business card. He pressed it into her hand, his fingers warm against her cold ones. "Call me," he said intensely. "Tomorrow. We need to talk." I don't think that's a good idea," Lena managed. "Please." The single word carried weight, urgency. "You may be in danger now, because of what you did, because you were seen helping me. I need to make sure you're protected." Before she could argue, he was gone, his companions ushering him toward a back exit that Lena hadn't even known existed. They moved with practiced efficiency, disappearing into the New York night just as the first police cruisers pulled up outside. Lena stood there, still clutching the dented tray in one hand and the business card in the other, as the restaurant descended into controlled chaos around her. Mr. Caruso was trying to calm the diners. Marcus rushed over to check on her, his face etched with concern. David was talking rapidly to the first officers through the door, but Lena barely registered any of it. She was staring at the card in her hand, at the simple name embossed in elegant script, Vittorio Romano, followed by a phone number and nothing else. Lena, are you all right?" Marcus was gripping her arms, peering into her face with worry. "I think so," she whispered. "What were you thinking? You could have been seriously hurt." "I don't know. I wasn't thinking. I just reacted." An officer approached, notebook in hand, and Lena knew she was about to spend the next several hours answering questions she didn't fully understand herself. But even as she let Marcus guide her to a chair, Even as the officer began asking her to recount everything she'd seen, one thought kept circling through her mind. She had stepped between a dangerous man and danger itself, had shouted, "Stay behind me," to someone who clearly lived in a world where he was usually the one protecting others. And in that instant, in that impossible moment, something had shifted between them. A connection forged in crisis. Recognition between two souls who should never have met, but now couldn't unknow each other's existence. The night that was supposed to be ordinary had become extraordinary. And as Lena looked down at the business card still clutched in her hand, she had the unsettling feeling that her life had just changed in ways she couldn't yet comprehend. Outside, the October wind continued to blow through Manhattan's streets, carrying fallen leaves and the promise of winter. The city moved on, indifferent to the small drama that had unfolded in one elegant restaurant. But for Lena Harper and Vittorio Romano, nothing would ever be quite the same again. The corner booth sat empty now, wine glasses still half full, the abandoned meal a testament to how quickly normalcy could shatter. And somewhere in the night, Vittorio Romano sat in the back of a car speeding away from danger, touching his chest where a bullet would have struck if not for the quick action of a waitress he didn't know, trying to understand why a stranger had risked everything for him. Neither of them slept well that night. Both of them stared at phones. Lena at the business card, Vittorio at the report his people had compiled about the young woman who'd saved his life. And both of them wondered what came next, knowing that something irreversible had been set in motion, a story that was only just beginning. In the morning, the sun would rise over Manhattan as it always did, casting long shadows through the urban canyons. The city would wake, indifferent and eternal, and two people from impossibly different worlds would have to decide whether to walk toward each other or turn away. But that was tomorrow's decision. Tonight they both lay awake, replaying those crucial seconds when courage and instinct had overcome common sense, when a waitress had shouted, "Stay behind me," and changed both their destinies forever. Brooklyn, New York. The following morning, the weak morning sun filtered through the thin curtains of Lena's studio apartment, casting pale rectangles of light across the worn hardwood floor. She'd been awake for hours, sitting at her small kitchen table with a cup of coffee that had long gone cold, staring at the business card that seemed to burn a hole in her palm. Vittorio Romano. The name meant nothing to her yesterday. Today, after a sleepless night spent researching on her laptop, it meant far too much. Her phone buzzed for the 15th time that morning. Emma. She'd been calling since 6 a.m., having apparently seen something on the local news about an incident at an upscale Manhattan restaurant. Lena had been avoiding the calls, not ready to explain what had happened, partly because she didn't fully understand it herself. The apartment was small, barely 400 square feet, but it was clean and organized with the efficiency of someone who'd learned to make every inch count. A Murphy bed folded up against one wall. A tiny kitchenette occupied one corner. 2 burners, a mini fridge, a microwave that only worked on certain settings. Her clothes hung in a narrow closet, the doors slightly ajar to reveal the same black vests and white shirts she wore to work. On the windowsill sat a collection of framed photos. Her parents, both gone 3 years now in a car accident that still felt surreal. Emma at her high school graduation, beaming despite the wheelchair. The 2 sisters together at Coney Island last summer. Lena pushing Emma's chair across the boardwalk, both laughing at something long forgotten. Lena rubbed her eyes, feeling the exhaustion settle into her bones. After the police had finished questioning her, after Mr. Caruso had sent everyone home with assurances that the restaurant would be closed for a few days, while they addressed the situation, after Marcus had insisted on riding with her in the cab back to Brooklyn, despite her protests that she was fine. After all of that, she'd come home and fallen down a rabbit hole of internet searches. Vittorio Romano wasn't hard to find, though the information about him was surprisingly sparse for someone who seemed to command such attention. There were business registrations, a legitimate import-export company, some real estate holdings, investments in various ventures throughout the city. On the surface, everything appeared above board, but it was the things not said that spoke loudest. The carefully worded news articles that mentioned his name in connection with alleged organized crime activities, before quickly adding that he'd never been charged with anything. The social media posts from journalists who covered the crime beat, dropping hints without ever making direct accusations. The Reddit threads speculating about New York's modern families and their legitimate business fronts. Lena wasn't naive. She'd grown up watching The Godfather with her father, had seen Goodfellas and The Sopranos, She recognized the signs, the patterns. Vittorio Romano was connected to something dark, something dangerous, regardless of whether it could be proven in court. And she'd saved his life. Her phone buzzed again. This time it was Marcus. "You okay? Need anything?" "Mr. C says take a few days off paid." She typed back, "I'm fine, thank you. We'll check in tomorrow." But she wasn't fine. Her hands had finally stopped shaking around 3 a.m., but her mind kept replaying those seconds. The flash, the impact against the tray, the feeling of Vittorio's arms around her as he pulled her behind the column, the look in his eyes afterward, that mixture of shock and something she couldn't quite identify. "You may be in danger now." His words echoed in her memory. At the time, she'd been too overwhelmed to fully process them. But now, in the harsh light of morning, they took on new weight. Had she really made herself a target by intervening? Did the men who'd come to the restaurant think she was connected to Vittorio somehow? A sharp knock at her door made Lena jump, sloshing cold coffee across the table. She grabbed a dish towel to mop it up, her heart racing. "Lena, it's me," Emma's voice. Relief flooded through her. She hurried to unlock the door, pulling it open to find her younger sister in her motorized wheelchair, her face a mixture of worry and exasperation. "You've been ignoring my calls," Emma said, wheeling herself into the apartment with practiced ease. At 19, she'd been using a wheelchair for 3 years, the result of the same accident that had taken their parents. Her legs had been crushed, the nerves damaged in ways that doctors were still trying to repair. But her spirit remained unbroken, her personality as fierce as ever. "I'm sorry," Lena said, closing the door. "I just needed some time to think." "Time to think? Lena, there was shooting at your restaurant. It's all over the news." Emma spun her chair to face her sister, green eyes, so like their mother's, blazing with concern. "Are you hurt? What happened?" "I'm not hurt. I'm fine. It was scary, but I'm okay." Emma studied her sister's face with the intensity of someone who'd learned to read every micro-expression, every tiny tell. "You're lying. Something else happened." "What aren't you telling me?" Lena sighed, moving to the kitchenette to make fresh coffee. "It's complicated." "Then uncomplicate it. I'm not leaving until you tell me everything." So Lena told her. Not everything. She left out the part about researching Vittorio afterward, the suspicions about who and what he really was. But she described the confrontation, the instinctive decision to intervene, the moment the tray had saved her from something terrible. Emma listened without interrupting, her expressions cycling through disbelief, horror, and finally settling on something that looked uncomfortably like anger. "Are you insane?" she said when Lena finished. "You stepped between armed men. Lena, you could have. "I know," Lena said quietly. "I know, but I wasn't thinking. I just reacted. That's the problem. You're always reacting, always putting yourself in danger for other people. Remember when you confronted that guy who was harassing Mrs. Chen at the bodega? Or when you physically blocked that debt collector from coming into the apartment? That's different." "It's not different. You have this hero complex, this need to protect everyone, and it's going to get you hurt." Emma's voice cracked with emotion. "I can't lose you too, Lena. I can't. You're all I have left." Lena knelt beside her sister's chair, taking her hands. "You're not going to lose me. I promise." "You can't promise that. Not after last night." Emma squeezed her sister's hands, tears welling in her eyes. "Who was this man, anyway? The one you protected?" Lena hesitated, then retrieved the business card from the table. "He gave me this. Asked me to call him." Emma studied the card, then looked up sharply. "Romano? Lena, I've heard that name. There was a documentary on Netflix about organized crime in New York, and they mentioned—" "I know," Lena interrupted. "I looked him up. And you're still considering calling him? He said I might be in danger, that because I helped him, the people who came after him might come after me." Emma's face paled. "Oh God. Lena, we need to call the police. We need to tell them." "Tell them what? That I'm afraid of hypothetical threats from people I can't identify?" "Emma, I already gave the police my statement. There's nothing more they can do unless something actually happens." "So what? We just wait around for something to happen?" "No, I don't know." Lena stood, pacing the small space. "Maybe I should call him, hear what he has to say." "Absolutely not," Emma said firmly. "Lena, this man is dangerous. Whatever world he lives in, it's not ours. You did a brave thing, maybe a stupid thing, but it's over now. You walk away, we both walk away, and we pretend last night never happened. What if he's right, though? What if I am in danger? Then we go to the police. We don't go to a criminal for protection from other criminals. They argued back and forth for another hour, Emma pleading for Lena to stay far away from Vittorio Romano, Lena torn between her sister's practical concerns and a gnawing worry that maybe, just maybe, she'd stumbled into something she couldn't simply walk away from. Finally, Emma had to leave for her physical therapy appointment. Before she went, she gripped Lena's hand one more time. "Promise me you'll think about this. Really think about it. Don't make any impulsive decisions." "I promise," Lena said, meaning it. After Emma left, the apartment felt even smaller, the walls pressing in. Lena tried to distract herself, cleaning, though everything was already clean, attempting to read a book she'd started weeks ago, scrolling mindlessly through social media. But her eyes kept drifting back to that business card. Around 2 p.m., her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her thumb hit the accept button. "Hello? Miss Harper?" The voice was unfamiliar, professional, with a slight accent. "My name is Vincent. We met last night briefly. Mr. Romano would like to speak with you if you're willing." Lena's grip tightened on the phone. "How did you get this number?" "Mr. Romano has resources. Please don't be alarmed. This is simply a courtesy call. He's very concerned about your safety and would like to ensure you're protected." "I'm fine. I don't need protection. With respect, Miss Harper, you may not be the best judge of that. The situation last night was complicated. There are people who may misunderstand your involvement, who may see you as having chosen a side. Mr. Romano simply wants to talk, to explain the situation and offer his assistance if needed. I appreciate that, but I'm not interested in getting further involved in whatever this is." There was a pause. "Miss Harper, I understand your reluctance, but consider this. Whether you want to be involved or not, you already are. The question is whether you face that reality with support or without it." The word sent a chill down her spine. "Are you threatening me?" "Absolutely not," Vincent said quickly. "I apologize if it came across that way. I'm simply trying to be honest with you about the situation. Mr. Romano is genuinely concerned. He's at his office in Midtown. He'd like to meet with you this afternoon, briefly, just to talk. No obligations, no pressure, just a conversation." Lena's mind raced. Every rational part of her brain screamed to hang up, to block the number, to pretend this conversation never happened. But another part, the part that had made her step in front of danger last night, wondered if running away was actually the safer option. "I need to think about it," she said finally. "Of course. I'll text you the address. If you decide to come, just show up anytime before 6. If you don't, that's your choice and you won't hear from us again." He hung up before she could respond. Within seconds, a text arrived with an address in Midtown Manhattan. Lena stared at it, her thumb hovering over the delete button. Emma's voice echoed in her head. "You walk away, we both walk away, and we pretend last night never happened." Oh, but could she? Could she really just pretend none of this had happened? And what if Vincent was right? What if she was already involved whether she wanted to be or not? She thought about Emma, about the medical bills that never stopped coming, about the physical therapy that was finally showing progress after months of frustration. She thought about her parents, about how her father had always taught her to face problems head-on rather than running from them. She thought about the look in Vittorio's eyes last night, that moment of genuine concern when he'd asked if she was hurt. Before she could talk herself out of it, Lena grabbed her jacket and headed for the door. Midtown Manhattan. Early afternoon. The address led Lena to a sleek glass and steel building in the heart of Midtown, the kind of place where everyone in the lobby wore designer suits and spoke in hushed, important tones. The directory listed Romano Import-Export on the 15th floor. She almost turned around 3 times on the elevator ride up, but each time something made her stay, made her keep riding toward whatever waited above. The 15th floor opened into a surprisingly tasteful reception area. Modern art on the walls, abstracts that probably cost more than Lena made in a year, leather furniture arranged around a glass coffee table with fresh flowers. Behind a sleek desk sat a woman in her 40s, professionally dressed, who looked up with a welcoming smile. "Miss Harper?" she asked. "Mr. Romano is expecting you. Please follow me." They walked down a hallway lined with windows overlooking the Manhattan skyline. Through open doors, Lena glimpsed offices where people worked at computers, talked on phones, looked for all the world like employees at any other legitimate business. But she noticed the security cameras, the subtle bulge under the jacket of a man standing near the emergency exit. the way people's eyes tracked her as she passed, professional but assessing. The receptionist stopped before a set of double doors at the end of the hall. "Go ahead in," she said warmly. "Can I get you anything? Coffee? Water? I'm fine, thank you." The woman knocked once, then opened the door, gesturing for Lena to enter. The office was large, with floor-to-ceiling windows providing a panoramic view of the city. But unlike the ostentatious displays of wealth Lena had expected, the space was relatively modest. A solid wood desk, clearly antique but not flashy. Bookshelves lined with actual books, their spines worn from reading. A sitting area, with comfortable chairs arranged around a low table. Vittorio stood by the windows, his back to the door, hands clasped behind him. He wore dark slacks and a white dress shirt, sleeves rolled to his elbows. When he turned, Lena was struck again by the intensity of his presence. Not aggressive, but commanding in a way she couldn't quite articulate. "Miss Harper," he said, and relief was evident in his voice. "Thank you for coming. I wasn't sure you would." "I almost didn't," Lena admitted, staying near the door. "But you did. That took courage. Please sit. Would you like anything?" "I'm fine." She moved further into the room but didn't sit, her body tense with nervous energy. Vittorio studied her for a moment, then nodded toward the sitting area. "Please, this will be easier if we're both comfortable." Reluctantly, Lena sat in one of the chairs. Vittorio took the one across from her, maintaining a respectful distance. "How are you feeling?" he asked. "Last night was traumatic. Have you been able to sleep?" "Not really," she admitted. "I keep replaying it in my head. That's normal. What you experienced, what you did, it's not something the mind processes easily." He leaned forward slightly, his expression earnest. "I want you to know that I'm deeply grateful for what you did, but I'm also concerned that my gratitude isn't enough to address the situation you may now find yourself in. Your friend Vincent said something similar, that I'm involved whether I want to be or not." Vittorio's jaw tightened. Vincent shouldn't have put it quite so bluntly, but he's not wrong. "The men who came to the restaurant last night, they saw you protect me. In their world, that means something. It creates associations." "What kind of associations?" He was quiet for a moment, seeming to choose his words carefully. "I run several legitimate businesses, Miss Harper. Import, export, real estate, investments, everything legal, everything above board. But I also come from a certain background, a certain family, and there are people who see any success I have as a threat, who would like nothing more than to undermine everything I've built." "You're talking about organized crime," Lena said bluntly. Vittorio didn't flinch. "I'm talking about complicated family histories and ongoing business disputes that sometimes get resolved in unfortunate ways. What I am not talking about is involving you in any of it. But last night you involved yourself, and now I have a responsibility to ensure that doesn't come back to harm you." "How would it harm me? I was just a waitress who happened to be there." "If only it were that simple." Vittorio stood, moving to the window. "The men who came last night were sending a message. They wanted to show they could reach me anywhere, anytime. Your intervention, heroic as it was, complicated their message, made them look weak, foolish. And in their world, that's unforgivable." Lena felt her stomach clench. "So what are you saying? That they'll come after me for making them look bad?" "I'm saying it's a possibility we need to take seriously." He turned back to face her. "Which is why I'd like to offer you protection. Nothing invasive, just having some of my people keep an eye on you, make sure nothing happens." "You want to have me followed?" "I want to keep you safe," he corrected. "There's a difference." Lena stood, agitation making her pace. "This is insane. Yesterday I was just a waitress. Today I'm supposedly in danger from organized criminals? How did my life become this?" "You made a choice," Vittorio said quietly. "A brave, selfless choice that saved my life. I can't undo that choice, and honestly, I'm grateful you made it. But I can try to minimize the consequences. And what do you get out of it? What's in this for you?" The question seemed to surprise him. "Peace of mind, I suppose. The knowledge that an innocent woman isn't suffering because of me. That's it? Just peace of mind? What else would there be?" Lena stopped pacing, studying his face. "I don't know. I've spent half the night trying to figure out what you want from me. Why you'd care what happens to some random waitress." "You're not random," Vittorio said, and there was something in his tone that made Lena's breath catch. "You're someone who risked everything for a stranger. That's rare. That's worth protecting." They stood there, the afternoon sun streaming through the windows, the sounds of the city muted by distance and glass. In that moment, Lena felt the weight of a decision settling over her. Accept his help and step further into this world she didn't understand, or walk away and hope that Vincent's warnings were overstated. I need to think about this, she said finally. Of course, take all the time you need. He reached into his desk and pulled out a different card, this one with a phone number written in pen on the back. This is my personal number. Not many people have it. If you need anything at all, call me directly. Lena took the card, their fingers brushing briefly. Why are you doing this? Because someone should have done it for me once, he said cryptically. Because good people deserve protection. Because you saved my life and that means something to me. I should go, Lena said, suddenly feeling overwhelmed. Let me have Vincent drive you home. I can take the subway. Please, humor me. She wanted to argue, but the exhaustion was catching up with her. Fine, but just this once. As Vittorio walked her to the door, he paused. Miss Harper, Lena, if I may. I meant what I said. You did something extraordinary last night. Don't let anyone, including yourself, diminish that. The ride back to Brooklyn was quiet, Vincent respecting her need for silence. But as Lena sat in the back of the expensive car, watching the city blur past, she couldn't stop thinking about the choice before her. She'd stepped into Vittorio Romano's world last night without meaning to. Now she had to decide. Step back out, or move forward into uncertainty. When she got home, Emma was waiting, her face tight with worry. Where were you? Lena looked at her sister, at the person who depended on her, who needed her to make smart, safe decisions. I went to meet him, she admitted. Emma's face fell. Lena, no. Tell me you didn't. I had to know. I had to understand what I'd gotten myself into. And? Lena pulled out the card with Vittorio's personal number, staring at it like it held the answers to questions she hadn't yet figured out how to ask. And I still don't know, she whispered. I still don't know. Outside, the autumn afternoon faded toward evening, and somewhere across the city, Vittorio Romano stood at his office window, thinking about the young woman who'd shouted, "Stay behind me," and wondering how to protect someone who didn't yet understand she needed protecting. Lena had convinced herself she wouldn't call the number. For 3 days, she'd gone about her routine, or tried to. The restaurant remained closed while Mr. Caruso dealt with repairs and security consultations. Lena spent her mornings at the laundromat, her afternoons helping Emma with exercises the physical therapist had assigned, her evenings staring at her laptop, applying for temporary positions to cover the lost income. The card with Vittorio's personal number stayed in her wallet, a constant weight she couldn't ignore. Emma had made her position clear. Stay away, let it go, move forward. Marcus called daily to check on her. Each conversation a gentle reminder that she'd done nothing wrong and owed Vittorio Romano nothing. Even her therapist, a luxury she'd allowed herself after her parents died, suggested that maintaining distance was the healthiest choice. But on the third night, everything changed. Lena was walking home from the grocery store, 2 heavy bags cutting into her palms, when she noticed the car, a black sedan parked across the street from her building, engine running. She'd seen it there yesterday too, though she'd told herself she was being paranoid. Tonight, as she approached her building's entrance, she watched the car in the reflection of a shop window. 2 men sat in the front seat, their attention fixed on her building. Her heart began to race. She fumbled with her keys, dropping them once before managing to unlock the door. Once inside, she ran up the 3 flights of stairs to her apartment, bags forgotten in her panic. Through her window, she could still see the car, could see the glow of cigarettes as the men waited. With shaking hands, she pulled out her phone and dialed the number she'd sworn she wouldn't call. He answered on the second ring. Lena. Just hearing her name and his voice made her feel marginally safer, which terrified her almost as much as the car outside. There are men watching my building, she said without preamble. I don't know who they are, but they've been there for 2 days and I'm scared. Are you inside your apartment? His voice had gone sharp, focused. Yes. 3rd floor, facing the street. I can see them from my window. Lock your door. Don't open it for anyone except me. I'm sending people now, and I'm coming myself. 20 minutes. Vittorio. 20 minutes, Lena. Stay away from the windows. The line went dead. Lena stood frozen in her apartment, phone still pressed to her ear, realizing what she'd just done. She'd called him. She'd accepted his help. She'd crossed a line she couldn't uncross. Her phone rang again immediately. Emma. Hey, Lena said, trying to sound normal. Are you okay? You sound weird. I'm fine. Just tired. Liar. What's going on? Lena closed her eyes. She couldn't tell Emma about the car, about calling Vittorio. Not yet. Not until she knew what was happening. Really, Em? I'm just exhausted. Can I call you tomorrow? Lena, tomorrow, I promise. She hung up before her sister could argue, guilt twisting in her stomach. She hated lying to Emma, but how could she explain this? How could she explain that the world she'd tried so hard to stay out of had found her anyway? The next 20 minutes crawled by. Lena sat on her floor, away from the windows, listening to every sound in the building. Footsteps in the hallway made her jump. A door slamming somewhere below sent her heart racing. Finally, a firm knock at her door. Lena, it's me. Vincent is with me. She recognized Vittorio's voice immediately. Still, she looked through the peephole before opening the door. Vittorio stood in her hallway in dark jeans and a leather jacket, looking somehow both out of place and completely at ease. Vincent stood behind him, his expression professionally neutral. May we come in? Vittorio asked. Lena stepped back, letting them enter her small apartment. She watched Vittorio's eyes take in the space. The Murphy bed, the tiny kitchen, the photos on the windowsill. His expression remained carefully neutral, but she wondered what he saw, how her humble home compared to his world of glass offices and expensive cars. The car is gone, Vincent said, checking his phone. My guys identified the occupants. They left as soon as they spotted our people. Who were they? Lena asked. Vittorio and Vincent exchanged a look. Associates of the men from the restaurant, Vittorio said carefully. As I feared, they've taken an interest in you. What does that mean? What do they want? Information, most likely. They want to know who you are, whether you're connected to me, whether you know anything that could be useful to them. Lena sank onto her folded bed, her legs suddenly unsteady. This is really happening. This is actually happening. Vittorio knelt in front of her, his eyes level with hers. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry you're in this situation. But I meant what I said. I'll keep you safe. How? How do you keep me safe from people who are watching my home? By making it clear that you're under my protection. By making sure they understand that touching you would be a mistake they can't afford to make. And that works? They'll just back off? It should, Vincent interjected. Mr. Romano's protection means something. Most people won't risk violating it. Most people, Lena repeated. But not all. Vittorio's jaw tightened. Which is why we need to take additional precautions. At least temporarily. What kind of precautions? I have a house in the Hamptons. Private, secure, away from the city. I'd like you to stay there for a week or two just until we can resolve the situation and ensure these people understand you're not a target. Lena stood abruptly, moving away from him. You want me to leave my home? My sister is here. My life is here. Your life is also in danger here, Vittorio said firmly, standing as well. I understand this is asking a lot. Asking a lot? You're asking me to uproot my entire life because I made one impulsive decision. You're right, he said, and the acknowledgement took the wind out of her sails. You're absolutely right. This isn't fair. None of this is fair. But fair or not, it's the reality we're dealing with. Lena turned to the window, looking down at the street where the car had been. The space was empty now, but the violation remained. The knowledge that strangers had been watching her, cataloging her movements, deciding whether she was a threat or an opportunity. What about Emma? She asked quietly. If they've been watching me, they know about her. What if they try to use her to get to me? We've already placed protection on your sister, Vincent said. Discreet surveillance, but she's covered. Lena spun around. You're already watching my sister without asking me. To protect her, Vittorio said. Not to invade her privacy. My people are keeping their distance, just making sure she's safe. I should have told you, and I apologize, but when I learned these men were watching you, I couldn't risk them expanding their focus. Lena wanted to be angry, wanted to rage at him for making decisions about her family without her consent. But underneath the anger was a horrible gratitude, because he was right. If something happened to Emma because of her, Lena would never forgive herself. I need to think, she said. I need time to process this. Of course. But Lena, Vittorio moved closer, though he maintained a respectful distance. Don't take too long. These men won't wait for you to feel comfortable with your decision. How long do I have? Tonight. Maybe tomorrow morning. After that, I can't guarantee your safety here. The ultimatum hung in the air between them. Lena looked around her apartment. Small, shabby, but hers. The place she'd built after losing everything. The sanctuary she'd created through sheer determination and endless shifts at Luminosa. I'll need to talk to Emma, she said finally. I can't just disappear without explaining. We can arrange that, Vincent said. Would you like us to bring her here? Or would you prefer to go to her? Here. Give me an hour. Vittorio nodded. We'll wait outside. Give you privacy. As they turned to leave, Lena called out, Vittorio? He paused at the door. Why are you doing this? Really? And don't tell me it's just gratitude or guilt. There's something else. I can see it. For a long moment, he didn't answer. Then, because once, when I was younger, I watched someone get hurt because they helped my family. Someone innocent who didn't understand the world they'd stumbled into. I couldn't stop it then. I was too young, too powerless. But I'm not powerless anymore, and I'll be damned if I let history repeat itself. He left before she could respond, Vincent closing the door quietly behind them. Lena stood alone in her apartment, the weight of impossible decisions pressing down on her shoulders. Then she picked up her phone and called her sister. 1 hour later, Emma wheeled into the apartment with fire in her eyes. What's going on? Your message sounded urgent. Lena had spent the past hour rehearsing what to say, but faced with her sister's concerned expression, all her prepared words evaporated. I need to leave the city for a while, she said simply. What? Why? Lena, what's happened? So Lena told her everything. The phone call from Vincent, the car watching their building, Vittorio's arrival and his offer of protection, the house in the Hamptons. Emma listened in increasingly horrified silence. No, she said when Lena finished. Absolutely not. You're not going anywhere with these people. They were watching our building. Then we call the police, we file a restraining order. We do literally anything except running off with a criminal to his secret hideaway. It's not a secret hideaway, it's a house. I don't care if it's a mansion or a shack. Lena, listen to yourself. You're talking about leaving everything behind because some mob boss says you're in danger. Danger that exists because of him. I know that. Don't you think I know that? Lena's voice rose to match her sister's. But what choice do I have? Those men know where I live. They've been watching me. And now they know about you too. Emma's face went pale. Me? What do you mean they know about me? You're my family. Of course they know. Which is why Vittorio has people protecting you. He what? Emma's hands gripped the arms of her wheelchair. He's having me followed? Protected. There's a difference. No, Lena, there really isn't. Emma's voice cracked with emotion. This is insane. This entire situation is insane, and you're acting like it's normal. I'm not acting like anything. I'm trying to deal with a situation I never asked for. Then deal with it by going to the police, by getting real help. Not by running into the arms of the person who caused this mess. They stared at each other, both breathing hard, the accumulated stress and fear of the past days erupting between them. Finally, Lena spoke quietly. The police can't help me, Em. Not with this. You know how these things work. They can't do anything until something actually happens. Until someone actually hurts me. I'm not willing to wait for that. So instead you trust a criminal? I trust that he doesn't want me hurt. That's not the same as trusting him completely, but right now it's all I have. Emma's shoulders sagged, the fight draining out of her. What about me? What am I supposed to do while you're gone? Live your life, go to therapy, keep getting better. The protection on you will stay in place, discreet, at a distance, just to make sure you're safe. For how long? A week, maybe 2. Just until Vittorio can convince these people that I'm not a threat to them. And if he can't convince them? That was the question Lena had been avoiding, the possibility she didn't want to examine too closely. Then we'll figure something else out. Emma wheeled closer, reaching up to take her sister's hands. I'm scared, Lena. I'm scared of what's happening to you, of how you're changing. I'm not changing. You are. You're letting these people into our lives, into our family. And I'm terrified of where this ends. Lena knelt beside her sister's chair, their foreheads touching the way they used to when they were children, and one of them was afraid of the dark. I'm scared too, Lena whispered. But I'm more scared of something happening to you because of me. If removing myself from the city keeps you safe, then it's what I have to do. They stayed like that for a long moment, 2 sisters facing an impossible situation, drawing strength from each other the way they had since their parents died. Finally, Emma pulled back. How do I reach you? I'll call you every day, and if anything happens, if you need me for any reason, I'll come back immediately. Promise? Promise. After Emma left, after another round of tearful hugs and extracted promises to be careful, Lena sat alone in her apartment and allowed herself to cry. For the life she was leaving behind, even temporarily. For the innocence she'd lost the moment she'd stepped between Vittorio and danger. For the sister she was leaving behind, despite every instinct screaming at her to stay. When Vittorio knocked again an hour later, she'd packed a small bag and was ready to go. Are you sure about this? he asked, seeing her red-rimmed eyes. No, but I'm doing it anyway. The Hamptons, late evening. The drive took 2 hours, city giving way to suburbs, giving way to the exclusive coastal enclaves of Long Island's East End. Lena sat in the back of Vittorio's car, a different vehicle than the one Vincent usually drove, something expensive but understated, and watched the landscape change through the tinted windows. Vittorio sat beside her, maintaining a respectful distance, occasionally taking phone calls that he kept brief and cryptic. Vincent drove, his eyes constantly checking mirrors, taking occasional detours that Lena realized were meant to ensure they weren't followed. "Tell me about your sister," Vittorio said during one of the quiet stretches. Lena glanced at him, surprised. "Why?" "Because she's clearly important to you. Because understanding what matters to people helps me protect them better." It was a practical answer, but Lena sensed something else beneath it. Genuine curiosity, perhaps even empathy. "Emma's 19, she began slowly. "She was 16 when our parents died in a car accident. She was in the car with them, spent 6 months in the hospital, had 8 surgeries on her legs. The doctors say she might walk again someday with enough therapy and maybe one more surgery. But it's expensive and there are no guarantees." "That's why you work so many shifts," Vittorio said, understanding dawning in his eyes. "That's why I work every shift I can get. The insurance covered some of it, but not enough. Never enough. I'm her legal guardian, her only family. If I don't take care of her, no one will." "You've been doing this alone for 3 years? What choice do I have?" Vittorio was quiet for a moment. "You could have refused my help, stayed away like your sister wanted. But you're here because you're trying to protect her. I'm here because men were watching my apartment and I was scared. You're here because you put your sister's safety above your own comfort. That's what parents do, what guardians do." He turned to look at her directly. "What good people do." Lena didn't know how to respond to that, so she turned back to the window, watching the darkened landscape roll past. They arrived at the house just before midnight. Lena had expected something ostentatious, a mansion with columns and gates, something out of a movie about rich criminals. Instead, the house was large but tasteful, a modern beach house with clean lines and walls of glass facing the ocean. Security was present but subtle, cameras hidden in landscaping, a fence that looked decorative but was clearly reinforced, lights that illuminated the property without being harsh. "It's beautiful," Lena said despite herself. "It was my mother's," Vittorio replied, a note of sadness in his voice. "She loved the ocean, said it reminded her of Italy." He led her inside, Vincent disappearing to check the perimeter. The interior continued the theme of understated elegance. Comfortable furniture, art that looked chosen for love rather than investment, books on shelves that showed signs of being read. "You'll stay in the guest wing," Vittorio said, leading her down a hallway. "Private bedroom and bathroom, small sitting area. There's a kitchen if you want to cook, but we have someone who comes in to prepare meals. Whatever you need, just ask." He opened a door to reveal a spacious room with a large bed, windows overlooking the ocean and a door leading to what appeared to be a generous bathroom. "It's too much," Lena said. "It's necessary. You'll be here for at least a week, possibly longer. You should be comfortable." "Vittorio," she set down her bag, turning to face him. "I need you to be honest with me, really honest. How much danger am I actually in?" He met her eyes, and she saw him make a decision, to trust her with the truth. "Moderate to high," he said finally. "The men who came to the restaurant work for the Castellano family. They've been trying to expand their territory, take over some of my business operations. The restaurant was supposed to be a message, a show of force. Your intervention disrupted that message and made them look weak. In our world, weakness is dangerous. Our world. You keep saying that, but you also keep insisting you're just a legitimate businessman." A ghost of a smile crossed his face. "I am a legitimate businessman. I'm also the son of Salvatore Romano, who was many things, not all of them legal. I've spent the past 10 years trying to separate myself from that legacy, to build something clean. But the past doesn't let go easily, and there are people who refuse to believe I've changed." "Have you? Changed?" He was quiet for a long moment. "I like to think so. I don't do the things my father did. I don't hurt people, don't traffic in the things he trafficked in. But I'm not naive enough to think my hands are completely clean. The money that built this house, that funds my businesses, some of it came from my father, and there are still obligations. Relationships I can't completely sever without causing problems." It was the most honest he'd been with her, and Lena appreciated it even as the reality of it settled over her like a weight. So when this is over, when the Castellanos or whoever back off, then what? I just go back to my life and pretend none of this happened? That's the goal. And if they don't back off, then we find another solution. But let's deal with one problem at a time. He moved toward the door, then paused. Lena, I know this is overwhelming. I know you have every reason not to trust me, but I meant what I said. I will keep you safe, whatever it takes. After he left, Lena sat on the edge of the bed, looking around the beautiful room that felt like a gilded cage. Through the windows she could hear the ocean, constant and indifferent to human drama. She pulled out her phone and texted Emma, I'm here. I'm safe. Love you. The response came immediately. Love you too. Please be careful. Lena set the phone aside and lay back on the bed, exhaustion finally catching up with her. Tomorrow she would think about what came next, about how to extricate herself from this situation, about whether she'd made a terrible mistake by coming here. But tonight, for the first time in 3 days, she felt safe enough to sleep. Down the hall, Vittorio stood in his own room, looking out at the same ocean, thinking about the young woman who'd saved his life and wondering how to save hers without pulling her deeper into a world she should never have touched. Outside, the waves rolled in, eternal and unchanging, while inside, two people from different worlds tried to navigate the impossible distance between them. The days had developed a strange rhythm. Mornings, Lena walked the beach alone while Vittorio worked from his home office. Afternoons, they somehow ended up in the same spaces, the kitchen, the library, the terrace overlooking the ocean. Evenings brought conversations that grew increasingly personal, walls slowly crumbling between them. Tell me about before, Lena said one night as they sat on the terrace, the sunset painting the sky in shades of amber and rose. Before? Before all this. When you were young, when you still had choices. Vittorio was quiet, swirling wine in his glass. I was 8 when I realized my father wasn't like other fathers. 12 when I understood what that meant. 16 when I tried to leave. He looked at her. He found me in Boston, brought me home, said family was everything, that I couldn't escape my blood. But you tried again. At 22, lasted almost a year in California, working construction, trying to be nobody. Then my father got sick. My mother begged me to come home. His voice roughened. He died 6 months later, and suddenly I was responsible for everything. Everyone. You could have walked away. Could I? He turned to her. 50 people worked for my father. Families depended on that income. Rivals were circling, ready to tear apart everything he'd built. Walking away would have meant abandoning all of them. Lena understood duty, understood impossible choices made for family. So you stayed. I stayed. But I tried to change things slowly. Move toward legitimate business. It's been 10 years and I'm still trying. Is it working? Some days I think so. Others, he gestured at the house, at their situation. Others remind me that the past never really lets go. Their fingers brushed on the armrest between them and neither pulled away. Inside, Vincent watched through the window, his expression troubled. He pulled out his phone and made a call. We have a problem, he said quietly. He's getting attached, and so is she. The voice on the other end responded, and Vincent's jaw tightened. Yeah, I know what that means. I'll handle it. But some things couldn't be handled. Some connections, once formed, couldn't be broken by logic or danger or the weight of two incompatible worlds. Outside, Lena and Vittorio sat in companionable silence, watching night fall over the ocean, neither quite ready to acknowledge what was growing between them, or what it would cost them both. The call came at dawn. Lena woke to the sound of raised voices down the hall. Vittorio arguing with someone, his tone sharp with anger she'd never heard before. She pulled on a robe and stepped into the hallway just as Vincent emerged from Vittorio's office, his face grim. What's happening? She asked. Get dressed, Vincent said. Comfortable clothes. We may need to move quickly. Fear spiked through her. Vincent, just do it, please. 10 minutes later, she found Vittorio in the kitchen, phone pressed to his ear, his free hand gripping the counter so hard his knuckles had gone white. When he saw her, he ended the call. The Castellanos made a move, he said without preamble. They took Marco, Vittorio's lieutenant, the man who'd been kind to Lena at the restaurant, who'd checked on her welfare multiple times during her stay. Her stomach dropped. Took him where? We don't know yet, but they sent a message. They want to meet, want me to come alone, unarmed, to a location they'll provide. His jaw clenched. They're using him as bait. Then you can't go. It's obviously a trap. I don't have a choice. Marco's family. He's been with me since we were teenagers. I can't abandon him. So what? You just walk into their trap and hope for the best? Vittorio turned to her, and she saw something in his eyes she hadn't seen before. Not fear for himself, but a deep weariness. I've been doing this dance my whole life, Lena. Sometimes you have to step into the trap to spring it on your own terms. That's insane. That's survival. Vincent entered, tablet in hand. They sent the location. Warehouse in Red Hook, 2 hours from now. And, boss, he hesitated. They specifically said if you bring the girl, they'll let Marco go without incident. The room went silent. Me? Lena's voice came out small. Why would they want me? Because you're leverage, Vittorio said flatly. They think if they have you, they can control me, make me agree to their terms. He shook his head violently. Absolutely not. That's not happening. But if it saves Marco, no. The force of his voice made her step back. I won't trade your safety for his. I won't. It's not your choice to make, Lena said quietly. Vittorio stared at her. What are you saying? I'm saying Marco's in danger because of me, because I stepped into your world that night. If I can help get him out, by putting yourself in danger, Lena, you don't understand what these men are capable of. Then explain it to me. Make me understand. He moved closer, his intensity almost overwhelming. They'll use you to break me, to force me into giving up territory, business, maybe my life. And when they're done using you, they'll dispose of you because you're a witness, because you're a liability, because that's what they do. His hands came up to frame her face, gentle despite the desperation in his eyes. I can't let that happen, I won't. And I can't let someone suffer because of me, Lena said. I won't. They stood frozen, the morning light streaming through the windows. Two people from different worlds facing an impossible choice. There might be another way, Vincent said carefully. If we bring Lena but have our people positioned around the warehouse, we could control the situation. Make them think they're getting what they want while we extract Marco and ensure everyone gets out safely. Too many variables, Vittorio said. Too much that could go wrong. Everything about this could go wrong, Lena pointed out. But doing nothing guarantees Marco gets hurt. At least this way. We're trying. Vittorio looked at her for a long moment and she saw the war playing out behind his eyes. Between the man who'd spent his life protecting what was his and the man who was learning to let someone else make their own choices. If we do this, he said finally, you follow my lead. Exactly. No improvisation, no heroics. The moment I say run, you run. Understood? Lena nodded. Understood. Red Hook, Brooklyn, late morning. The warehouse loomed against the gray sky, its windows broken, walls covered in faded graffiti. The area was industrial and largely abandoned, the perfect place for a confrontation no one wanted witnesses to see. 3 cars waited in the lot. The Castellanos were already there. Last chance to change your mind, Vittorio said, as Vincent parked 50 yards away. Lena's heart hammered against her ribs, but she kept her voice steady. Let's get Marco and go home. They exited the car, Vittorio keeping Lena slightly behind him as they approached. Vincent stayed with the vehicle, hand near his jacket, eyes scanning for the backup Vittorio had positioned around the perimeter. The warehouse door opened, and 2 men emerged, followed by a third. Anthony Castellano himself, late 50s, gray hair, expensive suit that looked wrong in the decrepit surroundings. Romano, he called out, prompt as always. And you brought the girl. How considerate. Where's Marco? Vittorio demanded. Inside. Unharmed for now. We're not animals. We just want to talk business. Then let's talk. Let Marco go, and we'll discuss whatever terms you're proposing. I don't think so. First, the girl comes with us. Insurance, you understand. Then we talk. That wasn't the deal, Vittorio said, his voice dangerous. The deal is whatever I say it is. You're not exactly negotiating from a position of strength. Lena felt Vittorio's hand grip her wrist. A warning, a plea to stay behind him. But she could see Marco through the warehouse door now, sitting in a chair, his face bruised but alive. She made a choice. I'll go with you, she said, stepping forward before Vittorio could stop her. But you let Marco go first, that's the deal. Anthony smiled, and it wasn't pleasant. The waitress has courage. I can see why you like her, Romano. Lena, no, Vittorio started. It's okay, she said, meeting his eyes. Trust me. What happened next unfolded in seconds. Anthony nodded to his men, and they brought Marco out. shoving him toward Vittorio. At the same moment, Lena walked forward toward the Castellanos, heart pounding but steps steady. She was halfway between the two groups when she heard it. Sirens. Multiple sirens, growing rapidly closer. Anthony's face darkened. "What did you do?" "Nothing," Vittorio said, but Lena could hear the confusion in his voice. He hadn't called the authorities, that wasn't how their world worked. But Lena had. The night before, unable to sleep, she'd made a decision. She'd called a number she'd kept from that first night at the restaurant. Detective Sarah Chen, who'd been kind during questioning, who'd given Lena her card and said to call if she ever needed help. Lena had told her everything. About the Castellanos, about Marco, about the meeting. She'd asked the detective to wait until they had Marco safe, then move in, to end this cycle before more people got hurt. "You set us up," Anthony snarled, pulling a weapon. Everything happened at once. Vittorio lunged forward, grabbing Lena and pulling her behind a concrete barrier as police vehicles flooded the lot. The Castellanos scattered, some running, others raising hands in surrender. Gunfire erupted, not from Vittorio's people but from the authorities, warning shots that sent everyone diving for cover. "What did you do?" Vittorio demanded, his body covering Lena's as chaos erupted around them. "What I had to," she said. "I'm sorry, I'm so sorry, but this couldn't continue. People were going to keep getting hurt. Do you have any idea what you've done? What this means? It means it's over. The cycle, the violence, all of it. It's over." The standoff lasted 20 minutes. When the dust settled, Anthony Castellano was in custody, along with most of his men. Marco was safe, receiving medical attention. And Vittorio stood with Lena behind the barrier, both unhurt, both facing an uncertain future. Detective Chen approached, her expression professional but not unkind. "Mr. Romano, Miss Harper, we'll need statements from both of you." "Am I under arrest?" Vittorio asked. "That depends on what we find and what you tell us. But Miss Harper's cooperation has been noted. If you're willing to help us as well, to testify about the Castellanos' activities, things might go easier for you." Vittorio looked at Lena, betrayal and understanding warring in his eyes. "You planned this. I couldn't let you keep living this way. Couldn't let myself become part of it." Tears streamed down her face. "I'm sorry. I know you'll probably hate me for this, but I couldn't see another way." For a long moment, he didn't speak. Then slowly, his hand came up to wipe a tear from her cheek. "I don't hate you," he said quietly. I think maybe you just saved me." Again. 3 months later, Lena stood at the window of Luminosa, now reopened and busier than ever. The publicity from the incident had brought curious diners, though Mr. Caruso had been adamant about not exploiting the tragedy for profit. Still, business was good. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Outside. "Can we talk?" She looked through the window and saw him, Vittorio, standing on the sidewalk in a simple coat, hands in his pockets, looking uncertain in a way she'd never seen before. Her shift was ending. She grabbed her jacket and went out to meet him. "Hi," he said. "Hi." They stood awkwardly, months of separation making strangers of two people who'd once shared impossible intimacy. "I testified," he said. "Gave them everything on the Castellanos. They're going away for a long time. I heard. I also heard you're cooperating with the restructuring of your businesses. Full audits, legitimate operations only. Seemed like the right time for a fresh start." He smiled slightly. "Someone once told me that sometimes you have to break the cycle yourself. How's Marco?" "Good. Angry at me for the danger I put him in. Grateful to you for ending it. He sends his regards." "And you?" Lena asked. "How are you?" "Honestly, I don't know. Everything's changed. Everything I built, everything I was, it's all different now. Some days I don't know who I am without all the baggage. Maybe that's the point. Maybe now you get to find out." They walked together, no destination in mind, just moving through the city as the evening settled around them. Two people who'd saved each other in different ways, who'd stepped into danger, and somehow found something worth protecting. "I don't know if we can make this work," Vittorio said eventually. "Our worlds are still different. There are things in my past that will always complicate things." "I know," Lena said. "But maybe we don't have to decide everything right now. Maybe we just see what happens. Take it one day at a time." He stopped walking, turning to face her. "I'd like that, if you're willing to take the risk. I stepped in front of a bullet for you." Lena reminded him with a small smile. "I think I can handle a little uncertainty." They stood on a Brooklyn street corner as the city moved around them. Constant, indifferent, eternal. Two people from different worlds finding their way toward something new. Not a fairy tale ending, but something real. Something earned. "Stay behind me," Vittorio said softly, and she heard the echo of her own words from that first night. "No," Lena replied, taking his hand. "This time, we walk forward together." And they did.